we cannot count on anything but figuring out for ourselves how we can be as full and as competent as we can be.
Yeah.
And the only way I know to figure that out for oneself, you can't do it in advance. You have to do it by meeting every difficulty that you have along the way and figuring out how you are going to handle that. And that practice will give you strength for these unknown times ahead, where you need the strength of being who you are and making your decisions to carry on successfully.
I'm Keltie McGuire, and you're listening to the Kids or Childfree podcast. Hello, and welcome to the Kids or Childfree podcast. Today we have Anne Wennhold joining us again on the podcast. And if you did not hear Anne the first time around, she joined me to share her story of choosing to be child-free in episode 62 of the podcast. Now, something notable is that Anne is now 91. She was 90 at the time when I had her on. And it is quite rare to be able to hear about someone's decision from so much later in life and their reflections looking back and, of course, looking forward as well in terms of what life still holds for them, how they are managing this experience of aging without children. Anne holds nothing back. She's just very, very open about the good, the bad, the in-between. And I am so grateful that she said yes to joining us again. You all loved the past conversation I had with Anne. So if you have not already heard that, it'll give you more background on her story. And of course, she just doles out so many different insights that I know you're going to want to go back and tune into that. That is episode 62 of the podcast, and I will link it in the show notes of today's episode. In any case, Anne is back, and today is a special Ask Anne episode where I asked all of you, what questions do you want me to ask Anne? What do you want to know about her story? What are you struggling with that you would like her wisdom, her insights in, or on, I should say? So that's exactly what we're doing. Anne is back for a special Ask Anne conversation. And I just loved, as I always do when I connect with Anne, speaking with her, and really excited to share this one with you today. Anne, when I told our listeners that you were back for another conversation, everyone was very, very excited. And I thought before we do a little catch up in terms of how you've been of late and get into some of the questions that they are wanting me to ask you, that you might find it interesting if I shared some of the feedback that I got following our last conversation in May.
I'd be delighted to hear.
Yeah, would you be open to that? Okay, cool. So some of the comments we got on Spotify, one of the channels where I share the podcast, is Niha says, love this episode. Please have an Ask Me Anything with Anne. She is so articulate, self-aware, and honest. I like that she covered both pros and cons and didn't sugarcoat anything. Manifesting a techie as her neighbor, exclamation point. Did you find a techie for your tech help yet?
Not really. No, I have a guru I pay for to come. In fact, I just got a new computer 2 weeks ago. The old one was, and he was very helpful, but I'd still like techie for a nitty gritty.
All right. We need to work more on that, everyone listening. I told you we put our efforts behind this, so I'm going to tell everyone, manifest harder. Okay, Quirky Rachel wrote, what a beautiful and honest conversation. One of my favorite episodes. Definitely have Anne back. And we've had 85 conversations now. So I will tell you, you're among one of the most popular guests. And we've also had a huge number of people listen to our conversation, which is really cool. I can see the numbers. So
that is fascinating.
Yeah.
Very curious that people were interested in an older person at this stage when they're at an age, as I understand it, of making a decision.
Yeah.
And if they find this helpful, that's great.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. And I mean, as I think I expressed to you before, for me personally, when I was making my decision, one of my biggest concerns was about the later in life piece, namely changing my mind when it's too late to have a child, the possibility of feeling regretful about my choice. I think these narratives and beliefs around who will be there to support you, care for you, love you? What sort of meaning will you have in your life? Will you be fulfilled if you don't have kids? They're so pervasive that I will tell you, talking to people about this kids or child-free decision, that is probably the number one concern I hear. It's not about life today, because a lot of people seriously considering the child-free path actually feel really good about their lives as a child-free person today. It's more a concern about when I'm older. So, and can I also say, like, for me personally, I didn't have grandparents in my life for very long, or ones that I had a close relationship to. And I think that a lot of us are very disconnected from our elders. So it really is like such a privilege to be able to talk to you.
Thank you. It's a
Yeah.
privilege to be here.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'll share a couple other comments. I was saying this username, Smush Toast, is her handle. I love this episode. What a wealth of wisdom in Anne. Heather McDonald says, fantastic conversation. Please have Anne back. Farbie Doll says, this is so refreshing, and she is a mensch. I want to be Anne when I grow up.
Oh my goodness.
And Noah May says, wow, so much recognition. Thank you, Anne. Feeling seen is so important in your childhood. It's a long process to recover. If people would be a bit more kind to each other in this world, this would help a lot. So, yes, everyone adored you. And there were also further comments over on YouTube, people saying they relate to your experience with your mom, that it was a wonderful conversation, that you have to come back, that you're a total sweetie pie. So thank you for joining us again.
Thank you for sharing those.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, it's been a few months since we spoke. We last chatted in May, if you can believe it. It doesn't feel that long ago. How have you been lately? And are you still 90, or are you 91 now? I don't know when you're
91 now.
You're 91. Well, congratulations on your birthday.
Yeah, 91 is very different even from the 80s, I'm finding out. So it's a whole new trip. It's a whole new level of a trip. And one of the things I thought about after our podcast last time was people who were concerned with who would be there when they got ready to die.
Mm-hmm.
And concern for having children there, as well as spouses if they were still alive, and so on.
Yeah.
And it just brought to mind a number of people that I've met over the years, women particularly, who generally outlived their husbands, and the problems that they had with children they had. For instance, one woman in a group that I facilitated had lost both of her young children. Actually, they were in their 20s.
Wow.
Due to disease. She had no one else. She did not have relatives. And she was trying to navigate the terrain of being totally without her children, upon whom she counted to support her and be with her in her older years.
Yeah.
And this has happened in more than one case. Another woman I know whose daughter died of cancer, the daughter's son, my friend's grandson, was so upset with the family that he just disappeared from the scene and has never been heard from again. Her other son, or her son, had moved to Alaska to be as far away from the family here in New Jersey as he could possibly be, because he had such terrible images of growing up with his father, who was a rather difficult character. And he has not been back and been supportive of his mother in having to sell her house and having to go to assisted living and having any kind of interaction that would be sustaining, or somebody she could count on. So not only were there people you hoped would be there who were not there, but in some cases, people who were still alive and actively did not want to be with you.
Yeah.
And the pain of that must have been just, I can't fathom the pain that people would feel that. Now, that doesn't happen to everybody, but I think we never know how our life is going to turn out. We never know what will impact our children and for what reason. And while we hope that they may be around for us. We cannot count on anything but figuring out for ourselves how we can be as full and as competent as we can be.
Yeah.
And the only way I know to figure that out for oneself, you can't do it in advance. You have to do it by meeting every difficulty that you have along the way and figuring out how you are going to handle that. And that practice will give you strength for these unknown times ahead, where you need the strength of being who you are and making your decisions to carry on successfully. So that was what I came away with from our talk last time.
Thank you. I love that you were reflecting on it after we spoke. And I think what you've shared there is some real wisdom that we actually hear pretty seldom, because we have this idea that, or the hope, the wish that we can prepare for everything, right? And when difficult things happen or when we meet challenges, we hope that, or we think maybe if we live the right way, we could avoid those types of things. But to your point, we don't know, having children or not having children, how the future is going to look. And I really appreciate what you say, that it's about meeting it in that moment. And also, I think through that experience, we build then that resilience and I guess the confidence to know that we will be able to continue to meet whatever happens, if only because we have to. Like, what other choice, right?
And the other thing is that there is so much out of our control.
Yeah.
Grow up feeling and being taught that we need to control our environment, control our behavior, control our reactions, control how we look.
Yeah.
And then we come up against some of the instances that are beyond our control. People making decisions that affect us,
Yeah.
but we have no say in. And for example, the political climate we're experiencing in the United States is one that most of us never, ever expected to happen. So that there is a whole possible issue of financial stability, which is another thing that you tend to build up for yourself and count on
Yeah.
and have done very well with. And then something comes along that is out of your control. So you do need to keep building that inner strength and facing things as they come along, so that when the big issues hit,
Yeah.
you have a history of knowing how to deal with it, even though when it first hits, you're saying, me?
Totally. Yeah. It doesn't get easier, I'm sure.
Oh my goodness, yeah. So you have to get through your first reaction and then figure out, what am I going to do next?
Yeah. I'm interested. Has there been anything for you in, I guess, recent times where you felt really confronted and like you've had to bring that inner kind of resilience and figure things out?
Actually, yes. In terms of getting around, my body is doing things I never really expected it to do.
Okay.
I could see it happen to other people. I worked with people for whom it happened, but never imagined it happened to me. And that is that my legs are not very stable. My knees are definitely not stable. And on a daily basis, walking from room to room, I am mindful that some of the issues could collapse. Another thing is I had a hip replacement a number of years ago. I
Okay.
do know that they get old and need to be replaced. And I have been thinking about that and saying, at 91, do I want to go through another major surgery
Yeah.
with anesthesia, which is not very good at that stage of life? And do I go ahead proactively and have a new hip replacement, or do I go with the flow and see what happens? Because the reality is I could die before I actually need it badly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yes, that's a very, very clear issue. The other issue is neuropathy in my legs and feet.
Mm-hmm.
So I do not know how much longer I'll be able to drive. And giving up driving is possibly the most difficult thing I think I would have to face getting older, because that being able to drive, get myself out to stores, to events during the day. I don't drive at night anymore. Visit friends, just go to the park and get some fresh air. That freedom of movement will be closed to me.
Yeah.
And if I want to go out anywhere, I will have to negotiate with Uber or Lyft.
Mm-hmm.
And the freedom of movement is something that I'm aware of and I am thinking about ahead of time.
Yeah.
So yes, that's one level there.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure there's many different considerations, and you wrote a really lovely piece for the Conscious Elderhood website, which I can perhaps link in the show notes for people who are interested in reading it. But you were talking about, first of all, older age as far as your 70s and 80s. And you said something that I thought was interesting, because I think a lot of people already have ideas of what that's going to look and feel like for them. And you shared something that is exactly what was echoed when I had a recent panel that featured a number of women in their 70s who are child-free, one of whom was the lovely Kate Kaufman. And I think without exception, they all said that they feel like they are really living their best sort of fullest lives right now, that there's like a lot of, just unique experiences and connections and alignment in their lives. You similarly shared the 70s and 80s were some of the best times for you, I believe. Do you want to elaborate on that? Just because, again, I think a lot of times we tend to discount getting old with like things get naturally worse on all fronts. And so maybe you can share why those were some of your highlight times, if you will.
Oh, absolutely. Well, when I was 70 years old, I was retired from work. I worked as a hospital photographer and audiovisual specialist.
Really? That's very interesting and random.
It was fascinating.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, it just kind of grew. I wasn't hired to do that specifically, but it kind of grew into that. Anyway, I retired from that, and so I was freed from the necessity of making a living.
Mm-hmm.
So I was free to do what I wanted to do, and I thought, what do I do now?
Mm-hmm.
One of the physicians at the hospital and his wife ran a clinic for drug abuse families and had sessions within the clinic for the seniors, for instance, who were in recovery from alcoholism. And they knew I had been a teacher and had worked with groups. So they asked me if I would come and run that group on a weekly basis. Now, mind you, I was 70 years old, and the seniors in this group were in their 70s and early 80s. And I thought, I don't know about old people. How do you deal with old people? So I checked around. I found a workshop that was called Conscious Aging. Choosing Conscious Aging, and I thought maybe I'll learn something about working with old people, of whom I am one, but I didn't realize it at that point. And I went to that workshop, and a whole new world opened up for me. I became a facilitator for people who were looking for what they wanted to do in their retirement years. I did that until I was about 85, 87. So I had many years facilitating week-long workshops with people looking for what they wanted to do when they retired. I loved facilitating them. I absolutely enjoyed the people who came, the depth of the information they were seeking, the openness for dialogue, and it just nourished what I wanted and needed in my life, and didn't realize that I had been all my life working toward doing something like this. So that in my 70s, it was like it was the crowning number of years for all the struggles I had gone through in my childhood, for being part of a group, gone through in terms of being a teenager, a very shy teenager, wanting to be a part of something larger, but feeling incapable. The therapy I went through to kind of find out who I was as a person, all of that accrued and built into this strength that when I was free from having to make a living, I could put those things together and just fly.
Wow.
And in the process, I started writing some articles. I did some photography. Just had a wonderful, wonderful time. Took some trips to um, Scotland for a month to study clay making, weaving, and photography. Went to Korea, Southern Korea, to learn about the traditional style of pottery making there. And I photographed that whole trip and shared that in lectures. Yes, went to Egypt, and that was a gift. Somebody offered to take me to Egypt, and it was such a gift of opening to the history of the world in a new way for me. I had always seen it as a very linear process because all my history and religious training was that everything happens in a linear fashion.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, I saw it as a holistic. It was wonderful. And as part of that, I had a very significant dream in which the two parts of my Gemini self, the two parts of myself always fighting against each other, came together. And I finally got to a space where I felt like I was the whole person I wanted to be. So all of that transpired in the 70s and played out in the 80s and are still playing out, because when COVID came along and I could not travel and do those things anymore, I went online and ran classes in memoir writing as a way of looking to your past and preparing for the future because of the things you had done. I had discussion groups with people in their 80s and becoming into their 90s about what we experience at that age. It has been the most full, wonderful part of my life, better than I could possibly have planned it for myself.
I love hearing that. I love everything that I learn about you. I'm just like, there are layers upon layers to this woman. And I'm sure it's the case with all of us, right? We have no idea what lives both in the past and people's past experiences, but just the kind of multifaceted people that we all are.
We all are.
Yeah.
And that's my favorite thing to do, is to work with people to really begin to recognize, oh my goodness, this is me. I have all this. I have done all this that I've forgotten or not given credit for. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And just helping people get to that point where they can fly with who they are.
I hear how much passion you have for that. And I have to say, for myself, I feel very similarly with the kind of work that I'm doing right now, just in terms of like the past experiences that I've lived, the things that I've done professionally. Like it feels like a real full circle moment or sort of a culmination, and one that I know will continue evolving. I don't see this as any sort of endpoint, but there's something so powerful about feeling like you're like doing and being exactly how you've always wanted without knowing what that was. And also just showing up as yourself. Like, do you feel like you're becoming more Anne as life has gone on?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things about the Choosing Conscious Elderhood retreats that I got involved in, well, first of all, I had to learn how to be a retired older person and what to do. But there are systems and techniques that help us begin to realize who we are authentically. And one of them is actually writing a memoir, because as you sit down and recall things that have happened in your life and the legacy of the challenges that perhaps you have gotten from your family, but also the gifts that you have been given, also legacy from family members, you begin to see the inner self that often we tend to hide even from ourselves. We get so busy in trying to manage a daily life that we don't have the time to reflect and really remember and honor the steps and the aspects of ourselves that we have forgotten about.
Yeah.
There is another level to it, and that is learning about those things that you want or need to let go of in order to thrive. And this is called inner work, working with those steps, working with your memory, working with forgiveness, not so much other people. That's important. And we all learn about forgiving. The biggest problem with forgiveness that I have experienced is forgiving myself for not being better, for not doing better, for not saying the right thing at the right moment, for not dressing appropriately, for whatever. And that is an important part of looking at one's past, because as you cannot forgive yourself for certain things and explore your past, you begin to understand the situation that created this difficulty in yourself, not being able to forgive yourself. Once you understand how that sense was created, it's much easier to say, oh, okay, now I know. You were a kid, you didn't know better.
Yeah.
And you have some compassion for yourself, and that makes it easier to forgive yourself. And then going from there to forgiving other people, because you understand that some of the things that have offended you may have come from past experiences they're not even aware of at this time. So the more you examine it, from my point of view, not everybody wants to do that, and certainly
Hard work.
everybody has their own way. But this is very, very fruitful.
Yeah.
Uh, I had a lifelong difficulty with claustrophobia. And I had gone to doctors. I don't know whether I mentioned it last time, but I did
Here,
a
I'm
lot of
sure though.
work to try and get rid of it. And nothing happened until I went back and did my memoir. and found out that I had been a breech birth baby that caused a great deal of trauma of feeling locked in.
Mm-hmm.
Once I understood that, claustrophobia disappeared.
Wow. Powerful.
Yeah. So that is my example of how it's very helpful to, because that claustrophobia was something I kept saying that was hard to forgive myself for. What's the matter with me that I can't deal with it? Other people don't have this problem. Why am I having this problem?
Yeah.
So anyway, for whatever it's worth, that's path I took.
Yeah.
Other people have other paths that work just as well for them. So I'm not saying you have to do this way. By no means. This was my experience with me.
Yeah. So if you follow me over on Instagram at Kids or Childfree, you may have noticed that I have been sharing or teasing a big project that has been in the works for you all. And as of Friday, it is now in the world. Let me tell you, it took me weeks beyond what I anticipated, as is always the case with a good project, but it is certainly worth the wait. So what have I created for you? Well, it is called Kids or Childfree On Demand, and these are resources, classes for you that you can access anytime, anywhere. I have been listening to your feedback on the workshops and events and programs that I've been hosting over these last few years. And while I know that so many of you love this group dynamic that I'm able to bring, the real-time conversations that we've been having, I also know that it can be tricky with scheduling, with time zones. Yes, I am based in Munich, Germany. If you've ever wondered why on God's green earth these sessions are at such bizarre times, obviously that depends where you are in the world. We, of course, also have many of you who are in closer proximity to me. In any case, I know it can be tricky sometimes to find a time that works to attend our events. And you may also be somebody who would prefer to explore this kids or child-free decision on your own. Maybe the group dynamic is not your thing, and that's totally okay. And that's why I have put together a series of different classes that you can purchase a la carte, one-off. You can buy one, two, as many as you want, addressing different topics like a difference of opinion. You may recognize the name of that event because it's one that we've hosted as part of our support series sessions. We've got one that is all about an uncertain future. So how are we supposed to make this decision in light of the fact that we live in a very complex day and age, and we've got concerns like climate change and political upheaval? We've got a class about navigating difficult emotions because, let's be honest, when we're trying to figure out if we want kids or to stay child-free, it can bring up a lot of what are less desirable feelings. We'll just say, whether that's guilt or frustration or sadness. So this class is designed to help you work through all those different things. Yes, if these topics are sounding familiar, we have hosted these as live sessions, but what I've gone and done is I have created these as 1 hour on-demand classes that you can access again, anytime, anywhere. You will also get a fillable workbook that you can fill out digitally or you can print off that accompanies the class. I share additional resources with you in the class portal, what we call your on-demand library, where you'll be able to access all of the different classes that you've purchased. Lots of good stuff there. And in addition to the 6 classes that we have launched with, I will be adding more in the coming days. The good news on that front is because we are celebrating the launch of On Demand, I have what is called becoming an on-demand fan. And with that, if you want access to all classes, you can do so for $249, and that will give you a lifetime membership to other similar types of classes. So essentially, the value you get, the savings that you're able to have or experience from that will only increase over time. So you can access these on-demand classes for $49 each. Again, you can become an on-demand fan, which I'm sure some of you will find enticing because we've got some really good stuff there to support you. Head to the show notes, or the website, where you will find the link to our on-demand classes, our class collection. You can get started right away. You don't have to wait for me. You don't have to wait for the perfect time to fit this in your schedule. Whenever you have a few moments, you can tune into these classes. I know you're going to love what I have created for you, and I'm really excited to hear your feedback and hear how these classes are able to support you on your kids or child-free journey. All right, let's get back to today's conversation. With you being child-free, I'm interested if you feel like it has afforded you more ability, time, capacity to be reflective, to focus on your inner life and world. And not to imply that that's not available for parents, but I'm interested for you if you feel like there's any intersection with that decision, or if it's like, no, this is just sort of my makeup, if you will.
For me, it has afforded me more time. The hunger for having a relationship, the kind of relationship I wanted, that I began to understand I was not able to achieve for some of the issues that I had not worked through yet, left me with the time to say, okay, I will dive into that. I will take some time to do some therapy with it. I will do some reflective work.
Yeah.
And also, I'm very aware with people our age, my age, that still have spouses. The spouse can take a great deal of one's time and energy that does not allow for one's capability to take time to work with one's inner self. And by the way, I have to say, working one's inner self is not a fun, easy job.
It's not. It's why a lot of people don't do it. It's hard. Yeah.
So even while I'm older, I'm free. I don't have to worry about, nitpicking kind of things like what's for dinner tonight. I'll eat if I want, or I'll throw something in the oven. Um, but I have all kinds of ways to keep myself from doing some of this inner work. All kinds of ways. I will find I need to get up and rearrange my bookshelf. I need to sit down and work on the drawing I started last week. There is a TV program that I just had been meaning to watch. I am so good with that.
It's not just us younger people then with our phones and social media.
No. Oh, no. This is a daily fight for me. Except if I'm very tired. If I have had several busy days and I'm really tired, I do allow myself a day not getting dressed, lolling around in bed, pigging out on popcorn and wine if I feel like it. Yeah.
I love it.
That's also one of the gifts about aging alone.
Yeah.
That really, like nobody's going to say to me, what are you making for dinner tonight? Or why don't you feel like going out today? It's a beautiful day. We should go take a walk, do what? Yeah. No.
Popcorn and wine in bed sounds amazing, Anne. You're speaking my lingo. I told our community that we were going to ask Anne some questions, and what did they want to know? And so if I may, I have a few questions here that they wanted me to ask you.
Oh, sure.
So the first one's from Tanya, and she says, my question's about wills and estate planning. She said, thinking about who will get all my money and assets when I die gives me so much anxiety. I'm trying to, quote, die with zero by living my best life and splurging now, but hopefully with the right financial planning, there will inevitably be some leftovers. Without any siblings, nieces, or nephews, I don't have an obvious choice of where my money would go. Of course, there are charities and good causes, but the thought of my will always stresses me out. Let's ask Anne. Any thoughts for Tanya? How cute, right?
Oh, wow. That's a big issue.
Mhm.
Yes, I have worried about that. Um, I do not have a big amount of money to worry about. My hope is it will last as long as I live.
Mhm.
My father lived to 100, so if that means I have 9 more years to go, I have to be very careful at this point, and I don't have a lot to leave to anybody. What I've done is given away, since I moved out of my main living quarters and am now living in a building, a one-bedroom apartment. I gave away a lot of furniture. I gave away a lot of jewelry to people. I wanted to have it. I had a collection of pottery that I've given away to people who are very interested in Native American kinds of things that I had collected. I thought, let me do that now and enjoy their enjoyment of it. I don't need these things. I don't need to dust them. They live within me because they've lived with me so long. So let me give that away now. On the other hand, I'm estranged from my brother's family. I have 2 nieces and a nephew that I felt because of family obligations that I should leave them anything that's left. And so that's what I did. I made a will out, leaving them that after I have given away all the important things, material things I have.
Mhm.
But then I said, wait a minute. There are people in my life now who are supportive of me in many ways out of the generosity of their heart. And I would rather they have the money. In some cases, it could be well used. Than than a family that has been very remote
Yeah.
for a long period of time. So I recently made an addendum to the will, changing that aspect of it. Whether that's helpful or not, that has been my choice. And let the chips fall where they may.
Yes. Good advice. Interesting this idea. And I think there is such a pressure and obligation, as you say, to bequeath, is that the right word? Things to, direct family members' ties, etc. But it, it actually is very similar to people who are questioning this decision of should I have kids? Do I want to have kids, or is it just what I'm being told I should do? This idea that just because someone's related to us, that they're naturally the most important, the most loved by us, the most near and dear, it, of course, isn't true. So I really have to say, like, kudos to you for making that addendum and for what that represents, and saying, I'm actually going to prioritize the people that feel most important to me, not just because they're related to me. So I think that is helpful. Thank you. Okay, let's see. She has another question for you. Tanya had all kinds of questions. She said, another question is how she has coped with loss as she ages. Not everyone is lucky enough to see their 90s. I'm sure she has lost many friends and family members along the way. How has she navigated that? I remember when my grandmother passed away at 97, the only people alive and well enough to attend her funeral were her 4 kids and 8 grandkids. That made me so sad and questioned who would be at my funeral. I comfort myself by saying, who cares? I'll be dead. But still, let's ask Anne this too.
Okay. Well, the person that comes to mind most is my mother. Uh,
Mhm.
if you heard the first podcast, you realize that I just had so many issues with my mother. Actually, no, just one issue with my mother. Who I just desperately wanted her attention
Mm.
from, and have been angry, very angry for a number of years of not getting what I wanted. She died a few years ago while I was still working. Actually, she had a hip replacement that was not recommended for her, and she died as a result of it. And I was devastated when she died. I think because we had never had the opportunity to come together in a way that would mend the break, even though we had started to communicate and started to come back together. Mm-hmm. And I still feel that loss of her and that loss of the time together to make the connection I would like to have. So this is what I've done that has been helpful to me. On her birthday every year, I usually light a candle and I say, I would like to have a conversation with you. And in my head, I have a conversation. I review, well, whatever comes up at the time, it changes. But for instance, I know she loved grocery stores.
Yay.
She loved visiting grocery stores. Oh my goodness. She would go wild with Whole Foods or Trader Joe's or whatever you have that are, these big emporiums. She would absolutely love it. So I'd say, I remember how you loved to do that in the stores you and I went to and so on and so forth. And just go through that and say, I remember these good times you have given me, which I did not acknowledge at the time, but actually I do acknowledge now that you have given me so much of yourself that I didn't recognize because it wasn't what I wanted. So I do that. When I go to a brand new store, I walk into the store and say, hey, Mom, come on. We got a new store going here. What do you think you'll like around here? So I try and incorporate her spirit in terms of my life. The upshot of that is that over a period of time, I have come to understand the great, great gifts that she had provided me with that I did not recognize and must have frustrated the hell out of her because I didn't recognize. And I can now light a candle and say, hey, I'm really sorry about that. I wish we could start over again. And so that's what I do with the people who are deeply within me.
Yeah.
The other older people my age or older who have died, I am mostly very grateful just for having known them and for what they have given me and what the interactions have been. I like to review that. But actually, I am very happy that they had died. And if they have a good death, I am just so happy for them that it was a good death. It was not a difficult one. It was not one that had issues surrounding it. And in many cases, though we don't talk about death all that often, I do find that the health issues, the internal ones that they and we don't talk about that much, are so problematic that death would be a really good support for them after they had lived a long life. So that's how I handle it. I visit the people who have died that I'm deeply involved with and feel an ongoing relationship with now. And for those others, I'm just happy that they will feel no more pain or will not walk into something that is particularly difficult for them at this age.
I could have a whole separate conversation with you just about death because I agree it's something a lot of us don't want to talk about or think about. And for me, I think the invitation in life are the things that make me feel uncomfortable or unsure are the ones to move towards. And not in a literal sense, by the way. I'm not ready to move towards death quite yet, but to yeah, be curious about that and explore that. And I really appreciate the perspectives you share. And I'll say, having lost my dad 8 years ago, he was 65, relatively young. I similarly continue conversations with him, and I have a whiskey on his birthday or death anniversary, as we call it. And yeah, I think we can continue that dialogue. And I've heard beautiful sort of accounts of people who've shared that like that relationship, as you've said, does continue. It evolves, and sometimes there might even be some more peace there in that relationship because there's not the constant battle of the life of the living.
Other thing I'd like to add to that. I've worked with older people now since I was in my 70s, and I am older myself. When I'm in a group with people who feel really bonded and comfortable, someone will invariably ask, "Do you believe people can send signs to you after they've died?"
Mhm.
And I want to tell you from the experiences I've had and the people I've talked with, I will say yes. And my own experience when my husband died at an early age, he came to me for 10 days afterwards to tell me he was happy he died. He was not going to contact me anymore because our work together was finished and he was moving on to another plane. Those were the three things he told me. And I talked to a therapist I was seeing about that at that time. And he said to me, "Don't you think that was wishful thinking on your part?" Absolutely not. No more wishful thinking than if he had sat down in front of me in the flesh and started talking to me. There is a presence and awareness of an other that comes at those times. So the communication can and will be there. An interesting addendum, there was in the East Coast anyway, a few years ago, a big issue about death cafes. And
I've heard of this.
people would gather and talk about their experiences with death, their personal experiences or with other people. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on around that.
Oh, and there's I think a lot going on around us that we can't necessarily see or perceive. But I mean, alongside that conversation about death, I'd love to talk more about sort of this spiritual nature of ours. And I'm just very delighted that you and I have connected. So okay, I'm going to try and keep going with these questions to make sure we get them answered. We have a few more. One of them is from Laura, and she says, "I'd be curious to hear from Anne how she has maintained friendships with friends who have kids over the years, and how that might have shifted as her friends' kids aged." And I know to an extent you spoke about older people being quite consumed, I think, with grandkids, but I'm curious, how have you managed friendships with mothers? Have you? And how's that sort of ebbed and flowed?
The friendships that I've maintained with mothers are essentially those mothers that have a life of their own in addition to their children,
Yeah.
that they do not put all their attention and sense of self identification in being a mother with the children. One was a school teacher and she taught home economics. I love sewing. She loved sewing. She and her husband were interested in food. My husband and I were interested in food. So we'd get together. And when their children were born, we were a major part of the ceremonies around that, and we were asked to be godparents for one child. So we were involved in all aspects of their lives, but they were also, as parents and as adults, involved in aspects of our lives, visiting museums. My husband had art displays of the school children's work every year. They came to that. So they were willing to include us with their children, but they were also willing to do things with us without their children that we had mutual information on. This doesn't happen that often.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen that often, but the good friends that I've maintained are the women who have some other interest in addition to raising their children.
Yeah. I mean, obviously I'm at a different life stage, but I would echo that as well. And I think things have probably changed and evolved in the roles that mom takes on for the most part. And so it's probably more commonplace than not. It also might have to just do with, I don't know, my sort of demographic and, the types of people I've met over the years. But the ones, to your point, that I've also remained closest with and that relationships evolved are the ones, I have, there's other points of common ground, shared values, and like you say, interests outside of their children as well, which it just makes for a nice, good person.
With the grandparents also.
Mm-hmm.
Grandparents who have other interests besides, talking about the grandchildren all the time.
Yeah.
So it happens at those levels too.
Totally. Okay. I have a question from Charlotte who says, I wonder whether you could ask Anne whether she has any tips on how she built community throughout her life.
Well, that's a very, very good question. Yeah. That's still a question that I am wrestling with.
Yeah.
My community has an absolutely wonderful senior center with all kinds of activities and experiences and trips, and I am not a part of that community because I don't know exactly why, because I think it is because I am looking for a community of people who really want to delve into the kinds of things I wish to delve into. I find a lot of older people do a lot of activity to keep themselves busy and to keep themselves from thinking about things. I want to work with people who really want to think about doing things. And I don't always find that in a set up community. And I would like to add, though I'm not living in an assisted living apartment, which are all older people, my close friends who also like to delve into reading, discussion, and so forth in depth are finding it difficult in those communities that have a lot of activities, but so many people just fill their lives with activities to get away from having to think about issues and dealing with things. So the question then for me becomes, how do I find this community? And there were a group of us living around here who were very close in that respect. 4 out of the 5 of them have moved away. There is one left, and she and I meet every other week usually. We play games, but we talk in depth about what's going on, and that's very satisfying.
Yeah.
That is, and online, when I was conducting a class of people in their 80s who wanted to communicate in depth, I found one of the people who entered is in a community 15 minutes away from me. She's an artist. We become friends. Yesterday we had a play date where we just brought paints and papers and we played with designs and had a huge discussion over lunch about what is a wise elder. People want to be wise elders. What does that mean? Are you a wise elder? Am I a wise elder? I don't think so.
I was going to say, see next to wise elder in the dictionary, Anne Wennhold.
I'll tell you, we agreed that we have more questions about things now than we did when we were younger.
Of course.
So this is what I'm looking for. So now I have Linda here. That we are so far we're getting together once a month because she still has some commitment she has to deal with. But most of my community is online. The lovely Kate Kaufman is part of my community. I'm in New Jersey. She's in Oregon. Another close community friend is a retired physician in California. Online. One of my people who moved away, one of my close friends who moved away, is in New Hampshire. Online. So I am building an online community more than a in-person community. And that is an issue that I'm very happy about. I'm glad for Zoom and online communication, but I still miss the spontaneity of saying, let's get together for coffee this afternoon with people in the area. So I don't have an answer for that.
I think a lot of us are grappling with the same thing in our 30s and 40s. I mean, one of the things that I'm seeking in my life are those people that I can have the spontaneous, connected conversation, visit, similarly, I've got great connections. A lot of them, some of them are here in Munich, but a lot of them live in different parts of the world. And it's nice to have those sort of soul friendships. But I to your point, I think having both the in-person here in our physical forms, giving a hug, being together, doing art, like you say, is so important. And it's online is generally not spontaneous, right? We might send a message here and there spontaneously, but a lot of times it's like scheduling that out for days or weeks ahead and then time zones and all that. So
happen in between anyway.
Yeah.
But it is. One of the things I'm aware of, when I get a check, I like to go to the bank and cash it in person. And one of the tellers said to me one day, we have the ATM. You can just put the check in there. And I said, part of the reasons why I like to come in is I like to talk to a human being. I'm so tired of doing everything online with a non-human connection. Even going to the bank or the grocery store and saying hello to the cashier rather than checking myself out.
Yeah. I hate the self-checkouts.
Meaningful connection with humanity that I really, really miss.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, I have one more question. It's from Chelsea, and she says, I'd love to know if you feel like you missed out by not having kids.
No way. No way. I have enjoyed the young people and that friends have in my life. Of course, I taught school for a number of years, so I was with young people then. What I do miss now is having young people around, but in my apartment building, we do have a few babies yeah. But I miss having teenagers around. I miss having newly married people around. That's kind of a whole population group that I'm no longer in touch with. And that I miss more than having kids of my own.
Yeah. Thank you. Is there anything you want to add before we wrap up our conversation today?
What I'd like to say is what fabulous questions have been asked.
I know.
They really generate, more questions for me. And I'm sure as I reflect on this time together, some other things will come up as a result of that. So it's a two-way situation. I am learning, and the questions are helping open me up to new ways of thinking about things. So thank you.
You're very welcome. And there are always more questions here, both on the podcast and when you connect with me. I'm more and more and more. So yeah, I am happy to speak anytime. And something tells me it's not the last time we might be hearing from you here on the podcast. So if you will be so kind as to chat with me again in the future.
I'd love to do it. I thoroughly enjoy you and your openness and your willingness to explore all kinds of territories. Absolutely. Just let me know.
Amazing. Thank you for joining us today for another episode of the Kids or Childfree podcast. Now, before you leave, I want to ask you to subscribe to the YouTube channel because lo and behold, we have a YouTube channel. I've failed to tell most of you that this even exists. Now, you can not only find all episodes of the podcast on our YouTube channel, but you can also find short form videos. We've got them categorized based on the types of conversations I'm having, whether they're with parents, whether they're about being child free. We've got different tips on how you can navigate this kids or child free decision. So lots of good stuff there. Go check it out. Our YouTube channel is Kids or Child Free. I will have it linked in the show notes of today's episode, so you've got that handy. Otherwise, you can give it a search. And don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss any of our upcoming episodes or videos that we share on there. All right, that is all from me. I hope you have a beautiful rest of your day.